Hi everyone, my name's Chris. I'm Business Development Manager here at JTF. And on the call with me today we have Paddy. So we're going to go through some things around revenue models and enhancing your sales funnel within Marketo. Paddy is one of our lead consultants, and he will be taking you through all the good stuff. So myself first, we're just going to do a bit of an introduction and talk about some of the topics that we are going to go through. So just a quick bit about JTF Marketing. So we're marketing automation experts. We focus very much on Marketo and what we can get out of Marketo, helping you to empower your automation and to do more with Marketo. And really importantly, we love the challenge of solving all of these different Marketo solutions and marketing automation solutions. What we're going to go through today is things around revenue models. So what is it? Why is it important? What can it tell us? A few tips for success in terms of configuration and some of the things to look out for, and then how to really supercharge your revenue model. So some tips to take it that one step further.
The what is a revenue model question. So the one line that we've used here is obviously Marketo Revenue Cycle Modeler offers a solution to visualize, power, and analyze your customer journey. Nice one-liner, but what does it actually mean? I think for me, when we talk about customer journeys in marketing, we need to talk about them at quite a high level and really understand what is that customer journey, thinking not with your marketing ops necessarily hat on, but just with your marketing hat on. What is the customer journey from A all the way through to Z, from brand new customer all the way through to somebody who is, or brand new lead even, all the way through to somebody that is a purchasing customer. For me, this revenue model needs to form that kind of foundation of Marketo that you then say, let's build everything else upon that foundation. Because without knowing where people sit within a revenue model or within a customer journey, which is essentially what we're visualizing here through the revenue model, we really can't contextualize that journey. So for me, I think it's about making sure that it's that foundational component. And it also really offers kind of a live view of that customer buying journey and the stages that people sit in, so that at any point in time, you can see how many people are in each part. And we'll touch on in just a second, an understanding of how people move through each of those stages, which is really important. So if you jump to the next one, there's a success path analyzer kind of graphic on the right there. And this is just one of the ways within Marketo that you can visualize how your success path or your revenue model is performing. It's not to say it's the only one, and it's certainly not the only way generally to view this kind of information. But when we ask the question of why do we need a revenue model, some of that information that you can see on the right is exactly why. Because, we've pulled out that comment there of what gets tracked gets improved. You need to know whether people are cycling through your customer journey as you want them to, or whether people are getting stuck in certain stages, whether there's opportunities, whether we're brilliant at generating new leads and starting them off on the journey, but we're terrible at converting new leads. And also, you may also think, the stages in our journey where marketing is a little bit hands-off. So why do we really care what happens after that? Well, using that data to then inform what you do at the start and really starting to model out actually where we're generating these leads, and we can almost apply a logic to understand what might happen to them in the future, becomes really interesting. And I think that element of personalization and really contextualization is really important. We've all had that experience, I think, where you purchase a product in a typical kind of B2C environment or something, and then you get an email saying, are you interested in these products? And you kind of think, I've literally just bought from you. So avoiding that kind of thing and really contextualizing based on where a customer is within their journey with your business, I think is really important. So we just wanted to show a quick example just for anybody on the call that isn't confident with revenue models. I know there was a few. So This is essentially where you would get to if you were working within the revenue cycle modeler within analytics of your instance. And you would essentially build this. It's very user-friendly. It's a drag and drop logic. And this is the stages of your customer journey and also the paths between them. So you don't necessarily have to highlight every single path, but we've just highlighted what you can see there in green is what we call a success path. So in an ideal world, people would jump across those green stages all the way from unknown to opportunity, no pauses in between. Life's great. But as you can see, there's some red paths we call kind of detour phases underneath where we've got disqualified, recycled, and lost. And of course, this should be tailored to suit your business. So you might be looking at these things and say, actually, that prospect box, we don't really do that. So these can all be, names can be changed, stage types can be changed. And just to quickly cover those for anybody that's not aware, the stage types that were really often used are a inventory stage, and that's that kind of box icon that's used across the majority of the stages. And that's just your typical stage. I think it was as a box that you're putting people into. Then you've got the SLA stage. We've used here in the example at MQL. And that essentially applies an SLA. So you might say that actually we only want people to sit in that MQL stage for 7 days, and we expect the sales team to have picked them up by that time. And we can monitor that, and we can report on exceptions, people that have stayed in there a bit too long and things. So that can be quite a useful stage. And you also have gate stages, which are rarely used, if I'm honest. So the thing with the gate stage is it doesn't kind of track you as being in the stage. It's almost like you just skip straight through it to one of the stages that come off the gate. So it's kind of a version of a path. So you can use gate stages. You can equally just use 2 inventory stages if you want to track people's journey at every single stage, which is more often than not what people do. So that's just a quick example there. And then I think this slide's quite important to understand because it's very easy to say, as a marketing team, we know exactly what the customer journey is. And actually, our bit's the most important bit. I agree, but others don't necessarily think the same. So I think it's really important to understand where other stakeholders have touch points within this journey. So you can just see there that I've highlighted the CRM. May want to make sure if somebody becomes known, we want to know who they are. We want to be the gateholders of the data. You've also got sales on the right-hand side there, where we want to pick them up once they become qualified, and we want you to hands off because we'll take over at that point. It doesn't need to be as clean cut as that, but it just gives you a bit of an indication. And I think as businesses grow and kind of the way marketing teams are growing, we're getting more and more teams. You hear of growth teams and content teams and loyalty teams, and we're kind of now in a position where we once could say actually marketing looks after the majority of this, but now we're under that marketing umbrella. We've now got a lot of different teams and a lot of different stakeholders that need to have their input and should have their input into each of these. So when we touch on in a couple of slides how we suggest mapping this out, I would just encourage you to have that in the back of your mind, that you shouldn't build your customer journey and therefore revenue model in silo. So building your journey. So this is the important bit really. This is a bit of a framework that we follow, intentionally blank, because it's not a one size fits all kind of approach. So there's actually a resource at the very end of this that we'll point you to, where you can download this framework. But just to kind of talk it through a little bit to help that conversation and that piece of work, if you go away and do it. What we're mapping out here is there's 2 slides. There's a success path slide, and then there's a detour slide. Some people like to join the 2. It's up to you how you prefer to kind of visualize that. But what we're effectively doing here is we're mapping out that same thing that we just saw before in a little bit more detail. So you've got the stages. that are matching what we saw. So known prospect, MQL. And we're starting to just explain who is that person. So in here, we've got a known person is a lead that can be identified. So they've got an email address. We know who you are. Then a prospect is a known lead who's shown demographic suitability. So it's almost like we're phasing this through. And what you can start to really understand there is what are those data points. So for known, it's obvious. They've got an email. Great. For prospect, is it a certain set of fields that we want them to have? Is it certain criteria within those fields? So it might be certain companies or certain sectors. And then you start, as you move through things like MQL, you can start to pull in the more juicy information like lead scoring information, where you might say, actually, how is this person engaging with the brand? Maybe it's hand raisers at some point throughout that journey. So really understanding what is the data point or what is the touch point that moves you from one stage to another is what allows you to then go and build these campaigns or this program that powers your revenue model in your Marketo instance. And then at the very bottom there, we've got channels and actions, which I think it's really important. You can kind of build this out theoretically without that section, but without really knowing at each stage, what are we actually going to do? What activities are we going to mobilize? What channels are we going to use? You really don't get the ability to report on this off the back of it. So we need to know what happens to a prospect, what makes you a prospect, and what are we going to do with those people? So to really leverage this revenue model. So then if you just skip another slide, you'll see the detours. So all I've done there is I've said putting kind of detours on a separate slide, but I would very much encourage you to capture all of those detours. And the slight nuance here is within the channels and actions, make sure you capture the logic of how we're going to get them back on that success path. So I think a lot of people kind of go, there are some instances, don't get me wrong, like a disqualified people, where they'll often never rejoin the success path. But there are a lot of instances where people will rejoin the success path. And I think one thing to really note is if you're doing something, say it's a disqualified or say it's even a lost lead, and you're kind of saying, actually, this person has this data point, they're an intern or they're an assistant. And when we say, actually, we don't think that person's going to be purchasing, so we're going to disqualify them. There's nothing stopping that data point from then changing. So just make sure you can see in the previous slides that some of the arrows all kind of point in one direction. Make sure they can go the other way and we can bring people back to that success path. It's really important. So a couple of tips for success. So I'll just kind of go through them and elaborate a little bit. So map it out before you build it out is a bit of a mantra that we all say at JTF. So it's really easy to jump straight in the instance and start building this. We would encourage you not to. Map it out using those slides that I've just shown you, and it just makes it that much easier. Make your mistakes on the paper versus in Marketo, where it becomes really quite messy to try and unpick everything you've done. We like to use operational programs to build the revenue model. So what you physically can do in revenue model is you can double click, if you remember those arrows that were kind of working through each of the stages. You can double click on an arrow and you can set a smart list criteria that would say who if you fit the bill of that smart list, essentially ship you over to the next stage. I like to build it with operational programs. So you can actually use things like statuses within a program to be that trigger that moves you, and then use the operational programs to update those statuses. A little bit more complex to build, but what that gives you is more flexibility off the back of it. So you may have a program that moves somebody from stage A to stage B. And upon doing that, yes, you want to just move them, but you might want to take another 5 different actions. So you might want to sync them into your CRM at that point. You might want to trigger an alert to a lead owner. You know, there's a whole host of things that you might want to do, and using operational programs just offers that extra flexibility. Testing's super important. And if I jump one and mention that bottom one of load backwards, one thing we say is load your revenue. If you've built your revenue model, but you've already got a load of existing data that don't currently sit in it, load the model backwards, i.e. load everybody that is an opportunity, that has an opportunity, then the SQLs, then the SALs, then the MQLs, the prospects. One of the kind of quirks within Marketo is it kind of remembers things even if you don't want it to. So if you load people in at the first stages, you often find that actually my reporting doesn't seem quite right. And it's often because Marketo is trying to be too clever, and it's kind of remembering people that were in certain stages and things. If you load backwards, you don't get that. And that really comes to that testing, making sure that people are gonna, when you do that load, they're gonna land in the right place. Because if you put them in the wrong place, it gets really difficult to do again. And you may have been in the scenario where you almost kind of think, oh, I'm just going to make a whole new revenue model. We really want to try and avoid getting to that place. And then just last thing on there, or second from last, don't set it and forget it. It's one of those things where you can sometimes do it at an implementation. And you think it's one of the things that you set up. Let's set it up and then set and leave. It should be reviewed regularly. Anytime your kind of business operations change, or even just if you were to say, I'm gonna revisit this every quarter or every 2 months, and I'm just gonna make sure that nothing's changed, nothing is, people aren't moving in such a way that I didn't expect, or people aren't all getting stuck in MQL for even a technical reason rather than a marketing reason and things. So just make sure you're constantly revisiting your model. And what can it tell us? So we've covered a little bit of this, but this kind of piece of analysis on the right here, this report is really interesting. As I say, it's not the only place that you can find this information. You know, there are other reports where you can kind of see people by stage, but this is really the only one that shows us this level of information, and almost this kind of velocity report of how quickly and successfully are we moving people through the stages. So some of the things you'll see there is the kind of people per stage, or the balance, the inflow and outflow, which is relatively obvious, conversion rate, or I like to kind of use that to almost report on stickiness. So if the stage isn't converting particularly well, then people are getting stuck in that phase, which isn't often something that we want. We want them to keep moving. Time in stage, or velocity, kind of speed through moving through them. And then the two on the bottom are almost kind of added bonuses of customer journey exceptions. I think is something that it can tell us that's really interesting, not necessarily in this report, but where we mapped those stages and we were moving people through them, sometimes people jump stages, and they jump often in ways that we don't expect them to jump. So managing those exceptions and reporting on them and understanding them is really important. And then going back to what I'd said previously on that previous slide, you then revisit your model and you might make some updates based on some of those findings. And then the very last one there, what programs and campaigns contribute towards that movement or contribute towards success? We'll touch on this again in a second, but things like attribution modeling become really powerful to understand. Actually, we're moving a load of people from MQL to SRLs, or sales ready leads. So what is doing that? Is it a certain program? Is it a certain channel? Are webinars better at doing that than live events? Are emails better doing that than drip campaigns? You know, you can really kind of, it's almost like this is the top level. And then you start saying, actually, that's interesting. I'm now going to dig into that a little bit more, and dig in and keep kind of peeling back those layers until you find something that's really quite actionable. And then that kind of leads on to this supercharge your revenue model. That middle one, attribution modeling, is that one that I've just mentioned, which I think is really powerful. Can be quite complex to implement, but just the simple things around what is bringing you in to this model that we create, what is the first touch point of that customer journey, and throughout each stage, what touch points are making an impact and what touch points do we feel aren't particularly making an impact. So that might be as simple as the last campaign you got before you jumped to a certain stage or something like that. So that's a really important one. I think the lead handover process can be something that's almost brushed over. It's very easy to go, great, they're an SAL, there's a quick alert to you, good luck. I think actually really understanding what makes a good handover once they get to that stage, be it an SRL or an SAL, however your kind of business works, but really understanding how can we try and put that lead on a bit of a silver platter and make sure by which time we've captured all the information, the alert is good and well planned, and the synchronization happens at the right time. It's not as simple as just going, well, they've moved stage, not us anymore. And then the last bit there is engagement programs. So one of the natural progressions of a revenue model is to then build an engagement program aligned to that revenue model. And it becomes really powerful because you can say, actually, everybody over here is kind of pre-qualification. Anybody here is qualified, but maybe we want to keep nurturing them. And everybody in the kind of third box or third stream in that engagement program is maybe people that we just want to keep warm. And you can make sure that the campaigns that you send are contextualized to where you are in the journey and what else is happening within the business. So if a sales member is actively converting with a customer, then we don't want to be saying, oh, are you interested in this product every other day? So there's really kind of aligning your comms and your campaigns to this model and this customer journey is really important.
Thanks, Paddy. Yeah, some really impressive points in there. I think in terms of what now, we have various resources. These slides will be sent to you post-webinar, including links to be able to go through it. Can't wait. Jump onto our website and have a look. Things like customer journey map, which I know that Paddy, we were looking at then, going to be right there for people to be able to use as a bit of a template. So that can be really, really helpful. A few of the tips that you've obviously been covering as well in terms of creating that clear and trackable customer journey. Just a bit of a final point, really. If there's any of these parts that anyone's not particularly clear on, feel free to reach out to us. So if you want us to help you get your revenue model up and running, your sales and marketing processes, feel free to reach out and speak to us. If you're not sure where to learn to get the insight data you want, reach out. We can also offer you on some more strategy and help you generate more opportunities and better return on investment. Especially when we're talking about some of those supercharge elements. We're talking about engagement modeling, which is aligned to your revenue model. Engagement programs aligned to your revenue model even. Those are the sorts of next steps that we'd be really happy to help you on. If you've got any questions, please feel free to fire them away. Thank you for joining the webinar today. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you found it useful and insightful. Until next time, we'll see you again.